Hello and welcome to the Undressing the Spirit podcast, where sex and spirit go hand in hand. Join me, Tamara Powell, on a no-holds-barred adventure into the psyche and beyond every conceivable limit. Welcome back to the Undressing the Spirit podcast. I'm your host, Tamara Powell. Thank you so much for joining me again. Today's episode is going to feature some explicit topics and language, so please use discretion with children and other sensitivities. That being said, I am so excited about today's conversation. My guest today is Erin Roca. Erin is a writer, yoga teacher, and tarot reader in Florida. Her primary focus is writing about sex positivity and emotion positivity. She loves to help people get in touch with their own unique sexuality through writing, open discussion, and play. Her work has been published in several online journals, including Elephant Journal. Erin draws inspiration from reading about varied topics such as the lives of Catholic saints, traditional yoga philosophy, and Buddhism. She believes all these paths can lead one to a higher awareness and an enhanced life. Erin is fascinated with how the mental, spiritual, and emotional facets of each human person can be developed and trained just like the physical body. Erin is currently writing a book on profanity due to be published in 2017, which I am personally so freaking excited about. Erin, welcome.
Thank you for having me, Tamara. I'm excited to be here.
You are truly one of the most beautiful souls I've ever had the pleasure of sharing space with. Seriously.
Oh my God. Thank you so much. I'm happy to be here and I'm happy to share my stuff with you. I don't know what we're going to talk about, but I'm excited.
We're going to talk about all the things. I want you to share all the stuff with me. Yes. So tell the listeners a little bit more about yourself besides what I covered in the intro.
Well, I grew up in a really conservative Catholic household, and where sex was kind of in this container and restrained and, in the container of marriage, of course. And I never really accepted that. And I've talked with other people who grew up in similar upbringings, like very religious and dogmatic, and a lot of them had trouble transitioning when they were out in the world, but I never had that problem. I feel like and I guess I've come to the conclusion it's because I was always kind of inwardly rebelling. And I was always questioning and saying, well, I feel this way inside, so what does it matter that someone else is telling me different? So eventually I decided to go with how I felt instead of what I was being taught. And I don't necessarily see anything wrong with going to church or being Catholic or anything like that. I don't have nothing against it. I know it's beneficial for some people, but for me, I felt like more of a moral person when I left and I started exploring my sexuality and the elements of my human nature, which is what really ultimately what my work and my writing comes down to, is just being super curious about what it means to be human. And that includes sexuality.
Yes, I'm so glad you said that because you have your own podcast coming out, right?
I do. It hasn't started yet. I haven't interviewed anybody yet, but it's called The Curious Cunt because my 2 life mottos are number 1, be curious. And I love being curious because it encompasses so many things, and it also enables you to automatically kind of shut down your ego and your pride, because if you're curious about something, you want to learn. And if you're in that mode of learning, you have to shut down the ego. And my second life motto is to fuck conventions. And I love people who live unconventional lives, and I believe all of us have some element of unconventionalness in us, whether or not we talk about it to other people. But there's all of these social conventions and quote unquote norms. Like, that question has always fascinated me. What is normal? What is normal? And so when we get away from the perceived normal anyways and live these unconventional lives and thoughts, I believe that makes us more of who we are and more human, which is what I'm all about, just being more human.
I love that. I love the title of your podcast. I just read an article on the anthropology and etymology behind the word cunt and the reclaiming of it and how technically everyone is a cunt.
It's fascinating. It's fascinating. I love etymology.
Me too. And I've seen even on some of your postings that you're getting pushback already, especially from the older generation. That is just a pejorative word. It's like growing up. I mean, it was like akin to the F word in my household. It was probably the worst thing you could call a woman. So what made you reclaim it?
Well, it actually started in January when I was at a meeting with my boss at the time and some of the other employees, and she was talking about the 4 agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz. You're familiar, right? And the first agreement is, or I don't know if it's the first one, but one of them is be impeccable with your word. And she insisted that you couldn't be impeccable with your word if you were using profanity. And I insisted the contrary because I can be impeccable when I'm using profanity. And so that just started all of the wheels turning in my head. And I wanted to be able to explain why. I didn't just want to say it just to say it. I wanted to know what my intention was. My intention was to be able to use these words that make me feel good and make me feel cool sometimes, make me feel a little bit vulgar and get into and why. And granted, a lot of the times when I do use the words, it's not always mindful. Sometimes it has to do with road rage, but I just wanted to spark the thought in my head, the awareness and the discussion with other people.
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head there, right? Like it's all about intentionality. If we're going to be impeccable with our word, I don't think it matters what word we're using as long as we're using it authentically in the way that we meant to.
And words are just words. We have power over them. They don't have power over us. If you're getting offended by the word cunt, to say that you're letting that word have power over you.
That's true. Any word only has as much meaning as you allow it. I believe so.
Yeah, that's the whole concept of my book. So that's what I believe.
I love it. I can't. Do you have a title
the
for your book
working title
yet?
is The Alchemy of Swearing, Transmuting the Profane into the Sacred. So I don't...
Whew, that is
right?
high right there. I love it.
Yep. Hashtag word nerd.
Oh my God. So tell me, how did you come to this place of being like so pluralistic in all things?
My mom would hate that it was her, but it was her. I was homeschooled and she taught me how to think for myself. And she taught me how to be discerning and how to look up what I wanted to know and be curious and question things. And granted, she wanted me to, become a nun and question things about God, which I still do. But sorry, Mom, but not sorry.
Love you, Mom. You are spreading your mission and passion, and I think it's really catching on.
I think because people want this, they want to be embraced in their humanity. We're over all of that keeping up appearances phase.
Yes. Oh my God, yes. So what do you think are some of the most common misconceptions and myths about sexuality or spirituality, perhaps, that our society currently holds?
That sex can be defined into categories. Like, we want to put a label on every single type of sexuality, but I read an article, I think ironically it was on like Bad Catholic or something like that, but it said something like there are as many different orientations of sexuality as there are people, and we want to be able to label things and define things. It's like music genres. And, we have to put a label on things. But as somebody once said, labels are sticky and hard to remove. So I guess that's what I think is the biggest misconception. And once we get onto those labels, we want to continue to validate them by our own definitions, which are so limiting because you can't put a label on humanity. That's the nature of humanity, is that it's always changing. You just can't put it into a box.
So true. As a counselor specializing in sexuality, there's this concept about sexual scripts, right? And that encompasses, a person's pretty much everything, their history so far with sex, what they liked about sex, what they don't like about sex, behaviors that they've been exposed to, their sex education, all of that. And so while there's a lot of overlap with the couples that I work with, there's still your sexual script is as unique as your own fingerprint. And so, while labels may allow for quick social psychology schemas, like if you say, I'm asexual, I have an idea what you mean, because we've all agreed upon a certain definition, but it's still going to look very differently person to person. And so I would wholeheartedly agree that that is an incredibly common myth, that we're all kind of the same in these boxes.
Absolutely. I guess I really love how Esther Perel talks about the sex education in Europe. I know. I'm so glad you turned me on to her, because she's like a goddess that I worship now. So, but she talks about how in America, essentially, our and kids, whoever, their sex education is porn. And in Europe, they understand that what you do in porn is what you do in porn, and it's your fantasy. And you have, she has that whole chapter on the third and the fantasy and having that element of fantasy, but it doesn't mean you necessarily want to act it out or you need to act it out all the time. And here in America, we just don't have that type of sex education. It's still taboo. It's still looked down upon. We're so progressive in a lot of ways, but not around sex. So I think that's another misconception and myth in America anyway.
So true.
And it's the same thing with the word cunt.
I would agree.
I've had a lot of Australians comment on, I have a video on my Facebook page about taking back the word cunt, and a lot of Australians comment on it and they're kind of like roll their eyes or like, yeah, whatever, like, because cunt is an endearing term in Australia, and I think in maybe Scotland somebody told me that too. So it's like normal for them. And they think they think I'm weird for having to say this, but I have to say this to us uptight Americans with sticks up our asses.
No, it's so true. I was just sent a video by someone just this week of a sex ed video as young as kindergartners in Norway, and they had full on, I don't even think they were dummies, I think they were real people. They had like the educator with a close-up caption pointing at penises and vaginas and pointing out, the different parts and how to stroke it and how to put a condom on. And here in the United States, we're like, oh my God, that's so terrible. But the thought is, and research backs this up, that Esther Perel's talked about, is that we overly eroticize shit here in the United States. And but yet we don't talk about the safeties and the how-tos. Like you said, they get it from porn. And so a lot of the couples and individuals that I work with have all sorts of distress and dysfunction around their sexuality that we're just not seeing in other countries in the same way. We have higher teen pregnancy ratings. We have higher abortion ratings. We've got higher incidence of STDs. And something that I love talking to the undergrads about at the university I teach at is that HPV from oral sex has now surpassed smoking as the number one cause of throat cancer, because we had an entire generation raised to think that oral sex is not sex, that was a safer way of playing. So they're walking around. We've got these commercials where, the juice is dripping down this woman's face as she's got in her bikini, right? Waxing this car. I mean, everything. There's TNA all over media. But yet our youngsters are growing up not knowing what is sex, how to have sex, and, what's quote unquote healthy. Yeah. I'd rather talk about what's healthy rather than normal, right?
That's why I feel so passionate about talking about it and getting, especially here where we live, it's kind of like the Bible Belt, and I just want to spread the message of sex positivity however I can.
Perfect. That's the perfect segue into my next question for you, actually, is that if everyone in the world were listening right now, what would you wish for them to know about sexuality or spirituality?
I would want them to know that all sex between consenting adults and maybe even kids or teenagers is healthy, and exploring your body and acknowledging your fantasies and your desires is healthy. It doesn't mean you have to act on them, and it doesn't mean that you can force them on another human being. It's that you have to acknowledge them. And the secondary thing is that you always reserve the right to say no. It's all about conscious choice. I think Mark Manson has an article about it's either a fuck yes or a no. It's such a great way to look at everything, not just
I love that article.
Everything in your life. If you're not Yeah, absolutely. If it's not a fuck yes and you're like enthusiastic,
everything.
like super excited about it, looking forward to it, then it's easy. It's a no.
It's so true. When I work with entrepreneurs, I often tell them that there comes a time when business opportunities kind of start flying at you from every corner, which is a great problem to have, total first world problem. But at the same time, you can get carried away from your vision if you're not paying attention to that fuck yes moment, because things that may look good on the surface may actually end up costing you in time, energy, money, and not bring you closer to the high-end goals that you have. So I think that fuck yes rule definitely applies to everything, including spirituality. I mean, how many of us have sat in a church service or an uncomfortable networking meeting or, I don't know, some new adventure and felt uncomfortable or felt like we should stay the shoulds, right? All of the frickin' shoulds. Rather than, like you say, going out and exploring something else, giving it an opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've felt that way in my spiritual journey too. And I've come across a lot of things where I'm kind of like, okay, this kind of, I feel it and I feel like I'm supposed to want it, but at the same time, I don't. But then when it comes to like yoga and meditation and Eastern philosophies, I'm like, fuck yes.
And you know what I love about you? Like, I hope you take this as a compliment I intend it as, but you are not the fucking Barbie doll yogi. Like, I love that about you. You've got tattoos, colored hairs. You're a colored hair. You're a curvaceous woman, and you have no problems making a Facebook video, showing you in your morning routine, like without being freaking airbrushed, lashes on.
Yeah, I hope we're getting away from that in the yoga community. There's still a lot of that. And a lot of wonderful, beautiful, enlightened yogis like happen to be super skinny and they like model type because that's what yoga does to your body. Sure. But there is that danger because it's supposed to help you feel more body positive and love your body. Right. But it kind of it's not yoga's fault.
I've seen some shaming.
Yeah, there is shaming. Yeah, that goes on, unfortunately. But I think there's a lot more benefits happening. There's always the risk, and that's the risk of humanity.
Agreed. And I think that that's really what I love about your message and you as a person is that you celebrate diversity and I've seen you make other women feel okay coming in and presenting with whatever and, exploring that on the yoga mat and not having to worry about, oh, I don't look like the chick next to me.
Yeah. Yoga is such an inner journey and it's so hard because as a former gymnast, I am so competitive. I mean, I couldn't help it when I first got on the yoga mat and I first was going to classes. I want to do better than the chick next to me. Of course I fucking do. I want to look better. I want to feel better.
Thank you for owning it.
Yeah. Yes. It's just a part of humanity. And I think that, that competitive nature is what is part of our survival and things like that. But it's a constant just awareness. It's not something you have to get over. I don't think it's something you need to completely eliminate because that would just be suppression. I think
No, I agree. It's part of the human expression. I don't think you can ever get rid of any of our emotions.
Yeah, absolutely. So when you're on your yoga mat, you just always constantly bring your focus back to yourself. I think there's a quote from St. Augustine or something like that. Like when you pray, it's okay if you get distracted as long as you come back to your praying. It's the same thing as your self-awareness. It's okay if you get distracted by what's going on outside as long as you come back to yourself and say, okay, I'm not worried about them and what they're doing. I need to turn my finger back around and look at what I'm doing.
Ooh, so good. So what are some practical steps you think for, you're such a trailblazer, Erin, for people who are like, yes, I want to begin exploring either my body, my spirituality, or even business goals, yoga, what the fuck ever, but I don't know how, like I'm scared. What were some of the things that helped you get over that inhibition?
First of all, the mantra, fuck it.
Of course.
Just take the big giant fuck it pill and swallow it.
I have Alanis's jagged little pill in my head now. Thank you.
Yes. That jagged little pill, I can guarantee if you look closely, it says fuck it on it. Well, and also just to begin, I belong to this girls group here locally, and one of the girls said, yeah, I'm the type of person who will fall off a cliff and figure out how to survive on the way down. And I'm like, yes, that's exactly me. That's just, I mean, I'm going to figure shit out. That was in the past when I was in my 20s and earlier, you know, we want to get things perfect. We want to know absolutely everything, especially for someone who's like such an information nerd. I want to know absolutely everything I need to know about this thing before I do it. And now it's kind of like, I'm just going to decide to do it and figure it out on the way. So if you're, if you're going to start a business, start a blog, you know, start exploring your body, start with one little thing and just do it. Like if you, for example, are interested in BDSM and you've never tried anything, you can go to a demo. There's tons of demos. The whole BDSM community is like super welcoming. Just show up. You can sit in your corner with your jacket tightly wound around you and just observe. One little step.
Or get a friend to go with you. Yeah. Take a couple shots before you walk in.
Yeah.
What about people afraid to leave their spirituality, their spiritual path? What would you say to them?
You don't have to leave it. You don't have to leave it. Even the Dalai Lama, he says in one of his books, if you resonate with Buddhism, but you were raised in a different religion, you don't have to leave your religion. You can still live the principles of Buddhism in your own religion. It was necessary for me to leave the Catholic Church, but it wasn't a big deal to me. It just kind of like faded away. But for other people, if you feel like it's really restrictive and it's hindering your ability to figure out who you are and embrace your humanity, go to a good therapist like you. Well, it's so true. We need people who validate
Amen. Thank you for that
experiences, and you do that as a therapist. And we need to be validated as human beings. We don't need to be validated as anything else. And our humanity encompasses confusion, heartache, depression, sadness, all of these things, jealousy. And we, instead of shutting them down, we need to embrace them, I believe.
Yes. Erin, you are such a joy. Where can our listeners find out more about you? Because you've got your hand in a bunch of different projects, and I want everyone to come check you out. So,
yes, ErinRoca.com, ErinRoca.com is my website, and you can find out more about me. You can order tarot readings on there and read my writing about lots of different stuff. I started an advice column that comes out every Monday. My first post was about anal sex, which got a lot of positive feedback.
I read that one and I was cheering it on. Yes, I actually, as a sex counselor, I thought it was.
Well, thank you. I've done a lot of research.
Professionally and personally.
And I'm also starting my podcast like I talked about earlier. It's called The Curious Cunt. And I'm funding it through Patreon, which is a really cool website for creators to get people to support their work. And that's Patreon, patreon.com/LESLIERINS. Leslie Renton. My first name is Leslie.
Yeah, I had never heard of that before I saw yours, but what a wicked cool modality. I love that.
Yeah, it's really cool. They've really blown up and they've had a lot of people be successful in it. And I really love what they're doing because it's allowing artists and creators and writers and people like me to get paid what they're worth for their work without having to charge, lots of money. You can, for $1 a month, you can help support someone's work. I mean, that's nothing.
Oh, it's so wonderful. And I bet you it's tax deductible too. Wink, wink.
I'm sure it is.
Just a plug. Everyone go check out Erin's stuff. And I will have all of those links in the show notes. Erin, you're such a doll. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening to the Undressing the Spirit podcast. I pray you found some inspiration and titillation today. As always, I am forever grateful for 5-star reviews, comments, and subscriptions on iTunes and anywhere else you may be listening to this broadcast. Please note the information provided is not meant to convey professional, psychological, or medical advice. If you could use such services, I highly recommend seeking them out from someone you trust. To get in touch with me personally, please check out ariatherapy.com or talesfromatrapezoid.com. Until next time, everyone.